Batman and the Ninja Turtles go together like beer and pizza. I'll leave it to you to decide which is the beer and which is the pizza. I've always said there are 100 or more different ways to do Batman without losing his basic identity that are all totally valid. And somehow, Ninja Turtles has proven itself perhaps as versatile. There's such a natural fit that DC and Nickelodeon keep coming up with excuses to put them together. There have been now not one but 4 crossover miniseries since 2015. Injustice 2 also included the Turtles as DLC, and it's really good. This was another one of those pinch me, I must be dreaming things I couldn't have imagined when I was a kid. Fan service as the substance of the piece actually can work. It's similar to parody or melodrama. The rules are different, and it's for a more limited audience. But to make it work, I think it's got to follow 3 basic rules. A, make it clear who the intended audience is right up front. B, don't take yourself too seriously, but let the characters in the world play it totally straight. And C, most importantly, it has to be clever with the references, show a lot of reverence for the material, operate at a high energy level, and have so much fun, you just don't care that it's not really about anything. Because that's what Batman vs. Ninja Turtles is. It's an edible arrangement of Batman and Ninja Turtles lore, references, action, and atmosphere delivered for 85 minutes from fans to fans. This movie is a story about 4 mutant turtles who show up in a city protected by a rich guy who dresses up as a bat, who think he is one of the bad guys, and then team up with him when they discover he isn't in order to fight a team-up of actual bad guys who plot to use ooze to mutate all the city's citizens to tear the city apart. And there's not a lot under the surface. I think there are opportunities here for more complex character arcs and some deeper thematic exploration, but I may not have wanted that as much if I hadn't read the source material, which curiously does have more of that, even though it's still the weaker of the 2 pieces. It's upfront about what it wants to be and wastes no time communicating that. With the opening scene of the Turtles fighting foot soldiers, the opening credits, a stylistic homage to that urban Frank Miller aesthetic that informs both properties, and a wonderfully thrilling Batman Shredder fight, followed soon after by a zany but equally well choreographed and exciting Batman Ninja Turtles fight. It's refreshingly escapist fun. The main challenge for a crossover like this is striking a balance between the 2 tones of each world, that there's equal fun to be had for fans of both. And the sweet spot is when they both fit together so well, it feels like one single property. And the most intelligent move this film makes is sidestepping the alternate reality stuff entirely. I see this as a Ninja Turtle story told on Batman's turf, except without any kidnapping plot at all. The majority of the cast is from Batman's world. Oddly, none of the Turtles' supporting allies are here, even though they made appearances in the comics. No Splinter, Casey, or April. It is a missed opportunity not to see Splinter and Batman trade martial arts and discipline notes like they do in the comics, and sacrificing him to get away from the old interdimensional cliche is an okay trade-off. The movie tries to have fun with the turtle stuff affecting Batman's supporting cast. So, like in the comics, we have the fanfickish notion of mutating the Arkham inmates into appropriate animals. In the comics, that seemed like a novelty shoved in for little reason, and like everything, it's here because the movie thinks you'll geek out over it, but it's better woven into the story. Far more of the fun references are to Ninja Turtles things than Batman things, despite the whole thing taking place in Gotham, like Donatello saying Bossa Nova from the 1990 movie, and all the Playmates toy references. This is a Saturday morning cartoon for adults, so the plotting is still a little cookie cutter, though smarter than any given episode of the 87 Turtles show. The overall tone is darker and grittier, and there's some graphic violence and a little language. This is not a serious narrative with heavy adult subject matter. We're not looking at The Dark Knight or Watchmen here. It's like adult collector toys. Everything about it looks like it's for kids, but that's not actually who it's intended for. In this case, though, I think that's a mistake. You're risking alienating younger kids by making some parts of this too rough and scary. I'm thinking about Roz beheading that guard at the asylum and that brutal, slow-motion, bloody Dark Knight Returns mutant face. Those graphic moments are few and far between, and the vast majority of this is totally appropriate for kids, at least by the time they're 7 or 8, and so those few rough moments are jarring and out of place to me. And I don't think it's missing anything without them. It says it's inspired by the miniseries by James Tynion IV and Freddie Williams II, but it's more of a direct adaptation than some of the DC animated movies based on specific material, like Hush. This is a perfect example of how to translate material that worked well in one medium into another where the initial approach may not be served as much by the new medium. Batman vs. Ninja Turtles isn't the same story, but it integrates most of the major scenes and ideas into its own narrative. Robin doesn't contribute a lot besides helping out in fights, and it's odd that in a story involving the League of Assassins, he provides exposition about Ra's al Ghul, but says nothing about his own connections to the League, namely his mother being Talia al Ghul. It sometimes feels like it's going out of its way to keep characters archetypal or two-dimensional, like a Saturday morning cartoon. Probably the reason it's inspired and not based on is because it's not interdimensional. And while I love the choice to move away from that here, it did create a natural ticking time bomb and sense of urgency that's missing from the movie. In the book, the Turtles are in danger of demutating the longer they're in Batman's dimension because the mutagen is a substance that can't retain cohesion for long in that dimension. And with that ticking time bomb goes Raphael's motivation for not trusting Batman in the comics, which leads to Batman taking him to Crime Alley and explaining why he understands the importance of family. But it's harder to make Raphael mad enough that Batman would open up to him like that without that kind of immediate threat, and I'm not sure how you could have created that without resorting to the interdimensional conceit. But again, the details of the plot are all improved here, particularly the villain motivations. Ra's and Shredder have clear individual goals, and each get something concrete from their alliance. Ra's wants to destroy Gotham, and Shredder has the mutagen that can transform Gotham citizens into mutates so they'll tear each other apart. And in exchange, he promises to give Shredder a Lazarus bit. Oh, and speaking of Ra's, the movie can't decide how to speak of Ra's. Shredder pronounces it like the animated series, and the way it's traditionally considered correct, Raish. But everybody else says Ra's like in Batman Begins. I don't know how that gets past a voice director. It's the first movie to see Batman and Joker both voiced by the same actor, Troy Baker. And of course, you cannot tell that both of these characters are the same guy. Both the comics and movie see Batman and the Turtles mistakenly believing they're on opposite sides and having that obligatory superhero on superhero fight writers always think fans are desperate to see realized. They team up when they realize it was all a misunderstanding. It's nice that we get that out of the way relatively early, and both fights on the street and in the Batcave are a lot of fun. I also like the look of this movie more than Freddie Williams' comic art, which I've always thought looks a little too storybookish. This is stylish and eye-popping, and I love that the turtles each seem to be modeled after a different sort of turtle, and are drawn almost in totally different styles. Raphael looks like he was designed by Mike Mignola, but nothing else in the movie does. I am really sick of these things using verses to sell product. Like the promise of a fight sells more copies. Here the argument is, I think you're the bad guy. The first act plot point is basically, oh, I was wrong, let's stop the bad guys together. The moral of the story is tacked on and obvious, teamwork and family, but it's less relatable and meaningful than the obligatory lesson in the average episode of a 2012 Turtles episode, and I think the movie would have been better not to go there at all. The movie rewards the Turtles both for using their heads and for being impulsive, because Michelangelo solves two major problems single-handedly by pressing a lot of buttons and being destructive. I was a little disappointed that a way wasn't contrived to include the turtle blimp somehow, considering this goes to the original cartoon so often, and it keeps talking about blimps. One of the real treats of the movie is getting to see Baxter Stockman as a fly again, and does in an homage to the film The Fly, with a really good Jeff Goldblum sound-alike. Stroke of genius. It has one of the coolest closing credit sequences I've seen, with brilliantly drawn mashup covers of classic Batman and TMNT comic covers all the way down. And the best kind of sequel tease in its after-credits stinger, where Batman has, of course, dropped Shredder in a vat of chemicals and transformed him into a new Joker. It's not a great story, but if something's gotta be made entirely for the sake of fan service, this is what that should look like. I'm giving Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a 3 out of 4.